This is about constructing a TrueType font for the SignWriting script with Unicode characters using the Graphite rendering system. Bella, if you could go to the slideshow.
Yes, I just did that.
I'm just going to animate this first slide just because it's a little bit complicated, and then I'll bring it back so we can see Adam.
Okay.
The question that we had is it possible to create a client-side TrueType font for SignWriting? Well,
what does that mean? What is a client side?
Well, we have, hold on a second. Client side. Right now we have the SignWriting icon server. That means that we generate the SignWriting images on a computer on the internet somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
For the client side, that means it's the actual computer that's in front of you. When you're using normal English or Spanish or French, anything like that, you have a font that's installed on your local computer. We call that's the client in the internet. There's the client and the server. So right now you need an internet connection to be able to see all of the SignWriting images, or you need to be able to run a image server on your actual computer. But with a TrueType font, we could actually install the font on your computer, and you wouldn't have to have an internet connection. All right, so is it possible to create a font for SignWriting that you can use on your local computer? So we started with the SignWriting script, and me and you, Valerie, we worked on the symbol font, which is the ISWA, and that gave us all of our individual symbol glyphs. You have to mix the symbol font with the SignWriting text, which is our model for the SignWriting on the computer. Now, with SignWriting, you have to get it into a Unicode stream of characters. And for us, that is the private use area on plane 15. So that's where I had taken it. Eduardo Trápani came along, and he introduced FontForge. I tried to use FontForge to import the font or import the symbols, but I couldn't get it to work. And Eduardo Trápani came along, and he got the FontForge to work. He made it work with Graphite, which is a rendering system, which I'll talk about more later. And you put that all together, and it is almost possible. We are so close, it's almost painful. So, for the outline, I want to talk about the background about the TrueType font, the motivation of why we're doing it. I want to talk about the quality of the font and the future of it. All right. Like I was saying, for the symbol font, we have the ISWA 2010, which has a lot of symbols. There's over 37,000 symbols. Rather than having a character for each, I broke it up into the combined character sequence, which is a complicated way to say a symbol. We use 3 characters to represent a symbol. And that way we can reuse a lot of symbols. So instead of 37,000 characters, we only have 672 characters. It makes a pretty big difference. With that Unicode on plane 15, which is the private use area, first of all, we do have those characters for the symbols. That's the 674, but we need 2 additional types. We have the structural markers that tell us if we're talking about a sign box, or the left lane, the right lane, the middle lane. And we also have something called number characters, where there is a range of 500 numbers, and each of those numbers between 0 and 500 is a character in itself, and that's portrayed in the Unicode. All right, now the FontForge. Trying to import these characters or these symbols into the font, I found out that you have to use a specific naming convention, and it's a little bit gibberish, but you can see there's U18 or 1D800, and there's U1D88C, and then there's the third character, which is U1DA92. So all 37,000 of those symbols each needed a name that was just like this, because it's 3 characters coming together to name that. I initially tried to install it in FontForge myself, and I could not get it to work. Later, Martin Hoskin came along, and he tried to import the symbols using that naming scheme that I had had. He wrote some scripts, and he gave me the TrueType font file, but I couldn't get that to work. Later, Eduardo Trápani came along, and he was able to work with the symbols and get them to import properly. He was also able to give us our 2-dimensional aspect, which is quite amazing. This brings in Graphite. Graphite is from the Summer Institute of Linguistics. You can find it at graphite.sil.org. It is a smart font technology. They deal with complex scripts that don't follow normal rules for the other scripts that are in Unicode and the other scripts that have the TrueType font or whatever type font created for it. They use something called the Graphite description language. It's basically programming for telling how to build a font together. I remember talking with Graphite people and telling them about the number characters, and they said, Graphite just doesn't work that way. You just don't use coordinate characters. So I wasn't quite sure how we were going to do it, and then Eduardo Trápani came along, and he used the coordinate characters in Graphite, and he used them for the Graphite description language, and he actually got the SignWriting to appear. It was quite amazing. Yes. All right, the motivation. Did you have something, Belle?
No, I was just going to comment that it was amazing. I've seen it as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, the motivation is, why do we want to have it? It is the client side, so the idea is it's on your computer, so you download the font, you install that font on your computer, and you don't need the internet, because point 2, oh, well, let me go to this slide. It is the iswa.ttf TrueType font. It's 6.1 megabytes. If you enable Graphite in Firefox, you'll be able to use it, and the source for creating that TrueType font is available on GitHub. You can go to the ISWA 2010 font reference, which is signpuddle.net/ISWA, and you can download the font. Like I was saying, there's no server required. Right now we're using the SignWriting icon server that creates our SVG images. The current one that we're using is running on the Wikimedia Labs, and again, that also has the GitHub source. But with the TrueType font, you don't need the server. SignWriting is a complex script. Then it doesn't follow the rules that the other scripts are following, so they call it the complex. It has the 2-dimensional positioning. So you tell it the symbols that you want, and you tell it the positions that you want them in, and that's true 2-dimensional. Because if you have 2 symbols, you can make pretty much an infinite number of signs. Normally it would maybe just be all around where you had one symbol here, and then you get the idea. SignWriting is complex because it's unpredictable placement. Because if I give you 2 symbols in a linear order, you can't tell me how they should be arranged in the 2-dimensional order. It's just not predictable without the third point, without the coordinate characters. So SignWriting is complex because we do use this concept of coordinate characters. User arrangement, it's another reason why the script is complex, because the user picks the positioning of these symbols. Any sign is possible. And again, there's no gatekeeper. You don't have to go through some type of committee or conference to get your sign approved. You just write the sign, and there's no waiting. You just get to use it. All right, now for the quality of the TrueType font. It's amazing. He put the entire ISWA 2010 into the font. He uses real 2-dimensional placement, where however you arrange a sign and however that sign is written in the mathematical name, it works how it's supposed to. The next, there's a few issues. Like I said, the font can be a little bit fuzzy depending on how you have it set up and where you're using that font. There's some fill issues because SignWriting is a two-color font. The fill issues can be a problem. And I also noticed some crashing, which seems to be getting better in newer versions of Firefox. But still, there can be some crashing when you use this this font. And some examples. On the left side is the TrueType font, and on the right side is the SVG. Now, here's one of those fill issues. If you look at the tails of the arrows, you'll see that in the TrueType font they're filled in. But if you look at the SVG, you can see that they are not supposed to be filled in. Here's another one for the head, and it has that fill issue. And this is actually the fill issues in the entire head. But again, we have the two-dimensional placement of all the symbols, and it's positioned perfectly. It's really great. Another example. Again, we have the tip of the arrowhead for the left hand. All right, some more examples, and you can see pretty much that we have the same issues. It's just the fill, and sometimes the symbols are a little bit fuzzy. So the future of the TrueType font is the question here. We need to work on the quality of the symbols. We need to make sure that we have a working two-color font. And there are some margin issues because since we're writing vertical with SignWriting, and since each sign does not have a definite size, because it can be as wide as you make the sign and as tall as you make the sign, getting everything to line up can be some issues. But as you can see, we have all of the symbols. We have the real two-dimensional placement using Graphite. It's quite an accomplishment and quite amazing. Eduardo Trápani is one of my heroes. He did a really great job on this.
Wow. By the way, I agree with you. He's one of my heroes too. I wish he could have presented, but he was too busy right now. So I'm glad you're showing us this. I'd like to go back to that slide. Is that
which slide?
Well, the one you're looking at right now. Can you hear me? I guess you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm going to just tell you, Steve, that I noticed that Eduardo showed us some screen captures of his work, where he had just taken a screen capture, I guess, of Firefox when he had used the font,
mm-hmm.
And it looked clearer than it does there. On the left, that's the way it seems to look on our site. I don't quite know why. And then over to the right, I know that's the way it's supposed to look in SVG, of course. But I mean, some of the fatter problems that you see over to the left aren't occurring everywhere because he seems to have it looking better on his machine. I wonder if that's just a local thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's one of the like I said, the symbols can look fuzzy depending in some of the setups.
I see. So it just depends on how your computer was set up. Is that it?
Yeah, it's something that we need to investigate, and I don't have a definite answer on what's going on. I've noticed this problem, and I can't really debug it.
Okay. Well, we actually, one of the reasons that when we found out that Eduardo wasn't able to present, he asked if Steve would go ahead and present anyway, and I said, why not? And I asked Steve, and I thank you very much for discussing it, because I guess I was one of the ones who stimulated this. I'd like to know myself how we can make it better, because it seems so close, doesn't it? As you said, painfully close.
Painfully close.
Yeah. Well, then,
right,
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it uses the FontForge and the Graphite and the TrueType font. I'm not sure if TrueType is the best format, and I'm not sure if this is really a TrueType or if it's more an open type. The font issues can confuse me a little bit. Graphite, I think we definitely want to keep with the Graphite. With the Graphite, we can use our two-dimensional placement. We can use our coordinate characters. It's really amazing.
Wow. You know, that, in other words, I was wondering about that, because I know to get the symbols to be in the proper relationship to each other is not very simple, is it, Steve? So, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we are positioning our symbols using what I call the numbers for the XY coordinates, the coordinate characters, and people that use Graphite, they say, but Graphite doesn't work that way, or we don't work that way, but that's the way that SignWriting works, and it's working in Graphite.
It's working in Graphite. I think that's the thing that everyone should realize. This font is amazing because what Eduardo did, and I take that there were other wonderful people helping. I mean, we've already seen lots of names of people who were involved with this over the years. And Graphite itself must be an amazing program, isn't it? Because it's making this possible in some way. It looks like that anyway, because the symbols seem to be holding the coordinate information. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, we are able to take those coordinate characters straight from our Unicode stream of characters, and it's able to process it properly. The question here right in the middle is FontForge. Is FontForge the best way to create our TrueType font file? Because FontForge creates it, Graphite renders it, and there's also that Graphite descriptive language on the bottom that kind of connects the font file with the Graphite rendering system. So getting that two-color font from our symbol font into a font file, I don't know if FontForge is the best way, but it's the way that we have it working right now. So going forward, we can either try to keep fine-tuning the FontForge scripts, or we can see what other tools there are to use.
Uh-huh.
Since we are dealing with the 37,000 symbols, an automated process makes a lot more sense than trying to do this by hand. Because
yeah.
Symbols in by hand is, as Adam knows.
Yeah, yes. Adam, you ought to know. And he's saying yes. Yeah. You guys are my heroes as well. No, you really are wonderful. Thank you, Adam, for the SVG, and you too, Steve. And thank you, Eduardo, for all that you've been doing for us. And I've been so impressed with Eduardo. He's from Uruguay, too, and I'm fascinated with the country, Uruguay. I don't know too much about Uruguay. Someday I'll have to learn about it, and I hope we can meet Eduardo at some point. I noticed, Steve, that you've moved your screen over to ISWA 2010.
Yes, this is the font reference. It's on signpuddle.net/ISWA.
Yes.
And if you go to that website, you'll see that the symbols in the ISWA were designed by SignWriting inventor Valerie Sutton, and the symbols were transformed by me. The first one up there is the experimental smart font technology for Graphite by Eduardo Trápani. There's the download. And we also have the GitHub source. We have the link for Graphite. In Firefox, you used to have to actually go in there and enable it manually, but with the newer versions of Firefox, they actually have Graphite enabled by default, so it's a lot nicer. Let's see, I'm not sure what browser I'm using right now. Let's see.
I think we're seeing Adam. I am not sure, but I believe so. I believe we are.
So let me, here's an example of a file or a page that uses the locally installed font. And, yeah.
Uh-huh. It still comes in fuzzy for us. And to explain to everybody, the arrows, the double-stemmed arrow, the two lines sort of blended together and became a blob.
Yeah, I think that's because the two-color font is being ignored. Getting two colors in the font is complicated, but people are working on that. So as more people work on this, and as font files can handle bigger characters or bigger collections, this is going to get easier, and it's only a matter of time before we have a font, and that way we can just install SignWriting font on any computer, and if you have, you just see the SignWriting is. You don't need an internet or anything like that.
But it has to be on Graphite, right, so that it stacks the symbols properly, because just that alone is so astonishing. The TrueType, it's not maybe a TrueType font, as you pointed out. What kind of font would you call it?
It's named after a TrueType font, but I think it uses OpenType, which is kind of an extension to TrueType. They kind of like start with TrueType here, and I think OpenType goes on top of it, and it adds some extra things to it.
Okay, so that means that when I was the one who sort of typed up your title. It was I who used the term TrueType, so I take the blame. Should it have said constructing an OpenType font for the SignWriting script?
I'm the one that used TrueType. It is me.
Okay. Doesn't matter who did it. The point is, if we called it OpenType, it actually might, I'm an older person who remember the days when TrueType was done very painstakingly, like Adam did SVG. It just was so hard to do TrueType before. So if this is OpenType, I'm impressed. Let me tell you, it's so fast and amazing. But as you said, they can't do two color. Is that right? And we do need two color. Could you explain that to everybody? It's not color. We're talking about white and black, aren't we, Steve? The palms, stuff like that.
Right. The outline or the line of the symbols by default is black. But if you look at the palms of the hand shapes or the tails of the arrows, that is actually a second color in there, and that is actually white. Outside of the symbol, it's transparent. So our font, it's actually a 3-color font, but since one is transparent, we don't really need to count that because that's just a given. Let me go to signpuddle.com for a second. And, oh, I cheated.
What?
I thought this would show. Let me. I can use the thin viewer, and there you can see it right here on the side. You can see that the line is black and the fill for the hand is white.
Yes, that makes it clear. With the green background, we can really see something. Our symbols definitely have a white fill, and the reason is we need to put one hand over the other. Let me go to my screen for a minute to just show people what I mean. Let's say you wanted to show one hand over the other, like this, or anything that would one thing over the other, or even like this. You want the hand to go in front of the face, for example. You don't want the face to be showing through the hand. You want it filled in so that the hand really looks like it's in front of that face. So that's why we needed to fill in. Even a white palm had to be filled in white to be able to show that one hand was over the other. Isn't that right, Steve?
Yeah, you can go to the projection, and this line that when we talked about sorting is a perfect example of these two hands at the end, where one is lying on top of the other.
Yeah, look at that. The last two hand shapes at the bottom of the sign.
Right.
There's one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, without the 2-color font, you don't see the overlap correctly, or they bleed through. And for readability, we need that overlap, which SignWriting has, that overlap. And
that's right. So the hand that's sitting on top of the palm of the hand there, that one with the 2 fingers, is in front of, we wanted to be able to read it, so we didn't want it to be see-through. Exactly. So we have white fill so that it isn't see-through. And the problem with that is that other fonts just don't have that, right? Okay, go on to your next screen. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, no, we didn't have that all the time either. In the beginning of SignPuddle, it didn't. We only had the black line. We didn't have the white fill, and you were looking at the symbols and the signs that SignPuddle was producing. And you're like, that's not quite right. So speaking of another job that took years or a long time, I remember you went in there and you hand filled every hand shape, and you went in there and filled in every tail. It's
that's
the amount of work that's realized here, phenomenal.
Yeah, that was connected with doing I think the 2008 ISWA, right? I believe. Or did I do it in the 2010? No, I think I did it in the 2008 symbol set.
I think it was one of the times when we were modifying the IMWA before the...
Oh, I can't remember the history, you can see. But it was painstaking. I'm going to tell everybody. I don't know how Adam and everybody does it, because I had trouble at moments. I had to go through so many thousands of symbols and put in these white fills every single one of them, every rotation, making sure nothing got changed, incorrectly. Big job. But worth it. Oh, so worth it. So worth it. So here, we're going back to the screen now, Steve.
Yeah, you got to have the two-color font. So the question is really right here in the middle, FontForge. Do we keep going with FontForge? Is it something that we can use, or are there other tools that are out there? And this presentation is really just to tell people, look how close it is. If you want to have a fun and great project, if you want to help us, if you want to help the world, if this font is perfected, we'll be dancing in the streets. We really will.
Oh, you bet. Well, thank you for getting us this far, and for Eduardo's incredible volunteering and donation of his expertise, and also to Martin Hoskin for giving some of the information that was needed as a building block towards this goal, right? We've all been involved with lots of things, so it's been a blessing to work with everybody. I think I'm just going to hope that the world will help us finish it, and it's somehow some kind of magic fairy dust will come down on the font, and it will, presto, be clean, clear, and with filled palms. And it'll be the first, maybe it'll be the first font in history that it has two color. I guess that's not the norm, is it, Steve?
No, I have heard of a couple other fonts that want the two colors, so it's something that people are working on.
Really? And who would do that kind of change? Would it be, in other words, who regulates how fonts are done that they would make some kind of an acceptance of that?
I remember hearing about it on the Unicode list that SignWriting wasn't the only font that wanted two colors, or the only script even. I can't remember who it was, and there was really no controlling authority. It's whoever writes the programs that creates the font and renders the font. If they support it, it's going to be used, kind of like SignWriting. We're making it happen.
That's right, and also thank you to the Graphite developers for helping us as well. So, and I want to thank you, Steve, and I want you to know that I've already invited our last speaker today, and his name is
Valerie?
Yes?
Valerie? I see two questions from somebody related to this presentation. I just wanted to let you know.
I appreciate it, and I don't know, I just clicked on the question. Oh, sorry, Adam. Let me go back to Steve for a minute. I think the questions would be for Steve, wouldn't it? I just don't know where to find them, because I look at these questions. I have a lot of them from the past. If I go all the way down.
I will go ahead. I'll read the questions, and then you can go ahead and answer them, okay?
That'd be great.
So the first question we have from Machado.
Okay.
He said, for the ISWA TrueType font name, you have it as iswa.ttf. Should it be ISWA 2010 because it's specifically for the ISWA? Or is that in the metadata somehow?
That is a great question, and we're not really sure. I remember that is the name that Eduardo Trápani chose when he created the font. And I remember me and Valerie talking about what should the name of it really be. And that is an excellent question, and I don't have a good answer.
And also, I now see the question, and I'd like to say one last thing too. If it's an open font, is that what you said it was? An open font, Steve?
OpenType.
OpenType. There we go. Would .ttf for TrueType font still be the proper, ending to the name?
I think. I'm not quite sure. It's
okay. Well, I do see the second question, I think, and again, it's from Machado. Hi, Machado. How are you? Machado has been very nice and has done volunteering and has done programming for us as well. And I think if we go to Symbol Bank, remember that old website of mine, I have some of Machado. I think he, with the IMWA, he converted it for us. And I have a question again from him. Question 1, I guess. It says Machado, I have faced the same filling problem when converting the ISWA 2004, which I think was called the IMWA, from SVG to TrueType. Wow. I ended up having to manually correct hundreds of glyphs. Have you achieved another automated way to fix this?
Machado, I remember he created that SVG of the IMWA, and I was really amazed by that. That's back when SignPuddle was still using pings or bitmap images. I think he used a program called PoTrace, P-O-T-R-A-C-E, which is you give it the bitmaps, and it traces and gives you back the SVG. I used the same thing.
The name of the program again, please. What is the name of the program? PoTrace or P or T?
P-O-T-R-A-C-E. PoTrace. I believe that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I went through a similar thing creating the first SVG versions for SignPuddle. That was before Adam's refinement. I had some manuals, and I actually had to go and create 2 SVG fonts for the ISWA. I had to create one SVG for the lines, and then I had to create another SVG for the fills, and then I had to combine and put them together. And I think that's what it's going to really take to create the a TrueType font, is where you actually need to create 2, where we create one for the line, create one for the fill, and then we figure out how we can put them together. And we have the idea that one is the color of the line and one is the color of the background, and that way it kind of just blends in and overlaps.
Can I use the select button on this question from Machado? If I do that, what does that mean? Does that give you the